Everywhere you look, there are zombies. On TV, the silver screen, t-shirts, video games, and even in our music, as people gleefully sing and recreate the dance in Michael Jackson's Thriller. There are cookie jars, garden gnomes, bedding, house slippers, lunch boxes, and even underwear. Almost any item you can imagine has been zombified. Zombies have become a part of our daily lives and were welcomed with open arms and the occasional moan. The question is, why? What would be so appealing about a walking corpse? Is it possible that we as a culture tend to step within the grasp of zombies when in times of societal stress to deal with our biases, anger with our government, and alienation, either self-imposed or otherwise? The concept of zombies has a long and varied history in folklore and religion. Here's an overview of their historical origins. The origins of the modern zombie concept can be traced back to African or Haitian voodoo traditions. In West African folklore, there are stories of reanimated corpses or spirits which have parallels with the later zombie concept. When these traditions were brought to Haiti through the transatlantic slave trade, they merged with the elements of Catholicism and the indigenous beliefs to give rise to the concept of the zombie that we know it today. In Haitian voodoo, a zombie is a person whose soul has been stolen, making them a mindless, reanimated servant. The idea of zombies as reanimated corpses entered popular culture through literature. H.P. Lovecraft's 1922 short story Herbert West Reanimator and William Seabrook's 1929 book The Magic Island both contributed to the polarization of the zombie concept in the early 20th century. In Hollywood, the depiction of zombie in film, particularly George A. Romero's 1968 classic Night of the Living Dead, played a significant role in shaping the modern image of zombies as reanimated, flesh-eating corpses. This film introduced the idea of a global zombie apocalypse and had a lasting influence on the zombie genre. In religion, the concept of zombies has also been shaped by the various religious and cultural influences. For example, the idea of the undead has rooted in European folklore about vampires and revenants. In some cases, these undead creatures were believed to rise from their graves and prey on the living. Zombie fascination is not a newly originated idea. Review of the history of movie production can see a trend of ebbs and flows in the tides of popularity. Starting in the 30s with the emergence of White Zombie in 1932, the successful film brought an onslaught of others to include Revolt of the Zombies, The Walking Dead, King of the Zombies, I Walked with a Zombie, and Revenge of the Zombies. And thus, our fascination with zombies was born. Historical scholars of the 30s would always know that the 30s were a challenging decade marked by numerous societal stressors. Some of the key including the following. The Great Depression, the most significant and defining event of the 30s. The Great Depression was a severe economic downturn that caused widespread unemployment, poverty, and hardship. It resulted from the 1929 stock market crash and had a profound impact on people's livelihoods. The Dust Bowl was a severe set of dust storms that brought droughts to the southern plains of the United States, causing agricultural and environmental devastation. It forced thousands of families to migrate westward in search for better living conditions. In the 30s, we saw prohibition, a ban on the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages. This led to a rise in organized crime and the illegal alcohol trade. In the 30s, there also came a rise of authoritarian regimes in various parts of the world, such as Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany and Benito Mussolini's Italy. These regimes contributed to a global tension and the approach of World War II. There was also racial tension and discrimination that were prevalent in the 1930s, particularly in the U.S. The Jim Crow laws enforced racial segregation in the South, and incidents like the Statesboro Boys trial highlighted the injustices of the era. Aside from the Dust Bowl, the 1930s saw ecological challenges, including the cutting down of forests and soil erosion. These particular stressors of the 30s had a profound and lasting impact on the world, influencing policies, cultures, and the history in subsequent decades.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Night of the Living Dead is a seminal 1968 horror film directed by the godfather of zombies, Mr. George A. Romero. This low-budget, independent film is a landmark in the zombie genre and is considered one of the most influential horror films of all time. The film follows the group's struggle for survival inside the farmhouse as tensions rise amongst its characters. It also touches on the themes of societal breakdown, fear, and paranoia. The film is notable for its gritty and realistic portrayal of a zombie apocalypse, as well as its unsuspected and grim ending. Night of the Living Dead is known for its impact on the horror genre, polarizing the concept of reanimated corpses as zombies and setting the template for numerous zombie films and television series that followed. It's considered to be a classic and a must-see for any horror movie enthusiast. Following the release of Night of the Living Dead, there was an influx of zombie movie films during the 60s and 70s, although none of them carried the commercial success of Night of the Living Dead or any Romero film following that time frame, such as Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead, that Romero injected with his own brand of social commentary. Anyone alive today would be familiar with the historical events of the 60s and 70s. However, we're going to recap just for good measure, as there are many transformative events that took place in that time frame. In the 60s, you have the struggle for civil rights in relation to racial segregation, discrimination, and the fight for equal rights were a major stress point during that time frame, to include the March on Washington and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Vietnam War involvement by the U.S. was a divisive issue that caused great political and social turmoil. You have the assassinations of various high-profile figures, including John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. These events shocked and unsettled society as a whole. In the 70s, we bridge into an energy crisis with oil shortage and high gas prices, and this played a significant impact on daily life. There was also a rise of terrorism during that time frame, to include the 1972 Munich Olympics massacre and the hijacking of planes, contributing to the security concerns of the average citizen. These decades were marked by significant political and societal changes, with movements and events that had a lasting impact on society, politics, and the culture of the U.S. and the world. As of this date, the turn of the century is exactly 23 years past. It wasn't long after that point that the zombie subculture reemerged, scratching its way to the surface in 2002 with the film 28 Days Later. This was not long following the 9/11 attacks and the beginning of the Iraq War. From the point of its release, we have seen an unprecedented boom in zombie fascination and other apocalyptic type films, but also an increase of societal stressors. Chemical warfare scares, the devastation of New Orleans following Katrina, multiple terrorist attacks throughout the world, mass shooting incidents, increased racial tension, increased political tension related to constitutional rights, increased civil unrest from the citizens toward the government following police shootings, and the damage of various hurricanes that have hit our states, many resulting in deaths and massive financial loss. Please keep in mind that this is a brief summary. There is so much more to the steps of how zombies have scratched their way into a day-to-day part of our lore. there will be more to come, speaking specifically to the psychological and social impact of why it is that we have become so attached to zombies and why it is that they fascinate us so. So be on the lookout for the next part. I look forward to getting into it with you because it is incredibly fascinating, as I have found out through previous research. Look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Remember, always go for the head.